Hello, I'm Robert, and it's a bit of a complicated graphic for my new blog post, but I just thought I'd pick out one particular theme from it, then you can help understand how it works. So the big question, the big puzzle was, why was it that both presidents were so enthusiastic about this press briefing? You saw they're very warm together, and if the whole thing had fallen apart, then they wouldn't have had a joint press briefing like that, like they did, and they had already worked out the title in advance before they'd already decided the title was Pursuing Peace. You only do that if you think you've got some progress there to actually present. And so why were they so positive about it beforehand? And then it just seemed to just fizzle away like a nothing burger, and there seemed to be nothing there. They had nothing concrete to present to the journalists, and they wouldn't even answer questions. So the reason why someone would do something like this has become very clear since then, is because they thought they had something would bring across the line. When they met in person, it just didn't work, and there was some major sticking point. The sticking point may have been that Putin wanted Ukraine to cede its territory to formally, legally, to Russia. And so I explained in my previous video, which I just uploaded, why Zelensky can't do that before a ceasefire. Utterly impossible. There's nobody on earth could do that. And there's no way they could change the laws to make that possible. So Steve Witkoff, if that was the drawback, then it's Steve Witkoff who was the chief negotiator, and he's been over to Russia 3 times, and he has had a reputation of being rather easily fooled by Putin and not very thoroughly versed in the background about Ukraine, and that may be the problem. So this might be the nothing burger. But Steve Witkoff came back and he said, look, Putin has agreed to a ceasefire, and he says ceasefire is fine as long as Ukraine agrees that the Russian territory, the Russian occupied territory, remains part of Russia. And then Trump might say, well, that seems reasonable enough. Surely, and then so he'd send a message back to Putin saying we're okay with that. And then they arranged that meeting. That could be a good big explanation of why it happened. But Trump had Marco Rubio with him, who is a far more experienced negotiator. And Marco Rubio would know very well that this is not something that Zelensky can do. So Marco Rubio would have looked there and said, look, this is a nothing burger, so we've got to try and fix this. And so now it doesn't seem it is completely nothing there at all, because if it was, they would have just said that the peace agreement has failed, and they would just have had to say that, and they both have had to agree to that, and they would have split, and they probably would have given separate press briefings. So what we likely have is what you could call a possible burger. And so I've got here sort of not so tasty looking meat and a couple of slices of lettuce and rather fewer seeds on the top, and so that's your possible burger. It means it's work in progress. They're not quite sure how to do it, and that's a ceasefire. These are meant to be metaphors for a ceasefire. This is a ceasefire that's just not working at all. This is a ceasefire in progress, and then this is a ceasefire where it's actually the full, enjoyable, tasty ceasefire where everyone agrees, and where Zelensky and Putin and Trump and Macron and Steinmeier and Merz, and they all say, oh, this is fine. So that's the definite burger. And so that seems to be what's happening. And so that was just a very simple thing I was explaining in this diagram. And so then the question is, how, given if it is that sticking point that I talked about in that previous video, then that is what Zelensky will be talking about to Trump. And Trump, it just doesn't seem to engage with his mind. Zelensky has explained this to Trump many times, and just doesn't seem to just run off. He just doesn't seem to be able to register what Zelensky is saying to him. But Trump is a very experienced negotiator in at making deals, and he can read, not just magically reading in body language or something like that. He can just read from what Zelensky says, and Zelensky just always, every single time, saying you can't do it. Then Trump will realize this is not a deal that we can make with, and so he will relay that back to Putin, and with everyone in Europe agreeing, and Macron, and with possibly some of his own staff saying the same. Marco Rubio is very probably saying the exact same thing to Trump and saying, look, Zelensky can't do this. But we know that the different camps within Putin's own party, and some of them will be saying, this is a lot of nonsense, and of course Zelensky can do that. Others will be saying to him, look, Zelensky can't do that. So there will be people in his near close circle that agree, and are telling him that Zelensky can't do that. So then Trump will just have to think this over and decide what to do. And then he'll be talking to Putin. And so one thing that Trump could do is just walk away from all this. Say, look, I've had enough of this. But that's not going to happen, because we all know that Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize, which he could get just for agreeing lots of ceasefires and peace treaties. But if he is not able to end the Ukraine war, there's no way he's going to get his Nobel Prize. So that is what his aim is. Whereas on Putin's side, Putin's not aiming for a Nobel Peace Prize. He's not aiming to be seen as a peaceful person in the world. His aim is the finance. And so I'll talk about that in my next video, because it's too much to talk about in one video. But you can see up here, Putin enjoys a luxury lifestyle and Russian semi-tropics, with his gold medal winning rhythm gymnast girlfriend and alleged mother of his kids. And it's perhaps not surprising that he sees the economy and wealth of the Russian government as top priority. And he brought 3 heavyweight economic people there to the press briefing, top brass, but they never got a chance to even discuss anything to do with the economy, and he had to go home without doing that because he didn't get the ceasefire across. So this is why it is very likely that Putin is very eager to restart this process again, because Trump offered him huge amounts of kind of goodies in the way of economics. He teased all these things that they could agree to together. There were things in TASS about they might agree to have an underground tunnel below the Bering Strait, and about having the minerals agreements, and there's all sorts of things that then they just teased these things in TASS, in the state media, and none of it has happened. So Putin will want to come back. So that's where there is possibility of this continuing. So that's my next video.